What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the current data points, what moved it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi went down 2.64% today. So it got dragged down by the broader market. All in all, it didn't do that bad in comparison to other fintechs. So again, that's kind of a good thing. But 10.49 the low, 11.15 the high. So in my video yesterday, I kind of covered a lot of the overnight activity, and it was showing some good momentum. So for whatever reason, big money wanted to really push SoFi higher. So it did hit roughly around, I think it was 11.30, 11.35 during the overnight trading. Once the market did open, it kind of kick-started that same level of momentum, and you had a lot of good buys coming from the secondary market as well as the dark pool, again, for whatever reason, because there wasn't any news or any SEC filings for SoFi. But at the end of the day, the broader market had other plans for it and kind of took it down. There wasn't really any tariff updates or any data points to justify today's pullback, aside from just a little bit more back and forth between Jay Powell and Trump. So Trump, I think he did spook the broader market today because he pretty much blamed the market on Jay Powell's inability to really cut rates, and he's a loser and all this crap. Coming from a third party, it looks very childish, the back and forth, but I think by Trump acknowledging that the market is bad, it did really reconfirm and spook the market a little bit more. So again, I think that was largely the attributing cause. There was one thing that did come out though, kind of correlated with SoFi, and it's very comical as well, the fact that I did bring this up in my video yesterday on some expectations for this week. And funny enough, we did have a negative rating. So exactly how I mentioned what's going to play out, that's what happens. For whatever reason, doesn't make sense. SoFi always gets negative ratings 1 week before SoFi's earnings. So we did have KBW, Tim, who has a 43% success rating, did give a sell $9 price target. So again, why give ratings 1 week before the fundamental, once we find out exactly where they are at with their earnings? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But nonetheless, I think SoFi did do fairly well considering it did get a negative rating today. So let me know your general thoughts on that. But most likely for the rest of the week, probably anticipate another maybe 1 or 2 more ratings. Again, doesn't make sense, but that's kind of what happens with SoFi. But one bullish thing that did happen was shorts returned today, 211,000 shares. So by them returning on a largely red day, that does show that it was unjustified. So that's kind of a good thing. But 12.89% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 138.91 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow minimum is back at being positive. So going into the earnings, it looks like the manipulation might be on pause for at least today, so we'll kind of have to wait and see what does come for the rest of the week. But aside from that though, looking at the options, 8.33 million in calls, 5.44 in puts. 47% of all the options being done today though were bearish in nature, a little bit more in line with the average though. So today was 13.7. You did have last Thursday 14.5, or I think I might have said that wrong, 13.7, but still nonetheless a fair amount. And the put/caller ratio is still fairly low. So again, that's kind of a good thing. Aside from that though, of the call options that were purchased today, there's a consensus for a very nice recovery to roughly around that 12 to 12.50. And I think a lot of that has to do with SoFi's typical FOMO leading into the earnings. That usually does happen. And then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub $10. So a little bit more upside is anticipated based on that. Like I already mentioned though, there was a lot of big transactions both on the secondary market as well as the dark pool. So you kind of had some selling in between here. I think that obviously wasn't the best, but that was probably just institutions reacting to the broader market. Dark pool was fairly active though today, as you can kind of see. So a lot of big transactions being done. Dark pool, as I always explain, is often enough used by shorts. and other large entities and stuff like that. So these are all the transactions, and I know I'm going through it relatively fast. My apologies. It's just kind of showing exactly what happened. After hours or close to the end of the day, you had 1.1 million, 1.3. So big money definitely was getting back in, 1.9. And then just looks like 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, there was a big one, 9.1 million. So good to see big money getting in. And so let me know your general thoughts. That 9.1 clearly is a large entity. I'd assume maybe BlackRock, Vanguard, or maybe some other names, maybe someone interested. I don't know. What's your viewpoint on that? Aside from that, though, with it closing at 1069, it did close between this pivot and this S1. So 1086 is going to be the next strong kind of target / resistance, followed by 1116. And so today it did bounce off of that general area for the high. So the high for today was 1115. So it bounced off of this R1. So we know that's a fairly heavy resistance level. Flip side, 1056, and then 1037 is going to be the next strong support point. So if you're looking at getting a good deal, just maybe orient your bias towards a lot of these support levels. So again, 1056 and 1037. I think at the end of the day, when it comes down to SoFi and just pretty much any stock out there that you really do like, it's very hard to catch the bottom. Sometimes you just have Trump come out with one comment and that spooks the market, causes a pullback. I think setting limit orders and dollar cost averaging is kind of the way to go. But and plus, aside from that, you might have a lot of negative downside because of possibly more negative ratings coming out. So let me know your viewpoint on that. But aside from that, though, today it did close still below that 200-day moving average. So that is 1149. So another key point to really watch for. If it does get over that, then yeah, you could see a very nice push higher. But it's still, the market's crazy sometimes. ALMA, $10.82, so it did close below that. The only negative as well about the chart, because of SoFi doing fairly well, bouncing off of kind of the $8-9 range, it did cause it to get rather overbought. Sometimes nothing really wrong with that. Stocks can stay overbought for extended periods, but I think all in all, if there is more negativity, that will result in a lot more volatility, as what a lot of Fed speakers as well as Powell has stated is going to be coming in just the foreseeable future, just a lot more volatility. So let me know your viewpoint on SoFi. What's your thoughts on that new BS rating, if you ask me? So $9 sell. And just what's your viewpoint on just SoFi in overall? So have you been buying? Have you been selling? If it does get back down to the 9s, that's where I'll be a buyer. I'll continue to dollar cost average. The only thing I did today under my portfolio is I just bought some more NVIDIA, and I believe that's kind of it. So I've been just watching the broader market, waiting for nice signs of a reversal, and I think that might be coming potentially this week, but then again, a lot of people are comparing it to 08, and during that time frame, it's very, I don't know, it's a fun time ahead. But again, as I always mention, near impossible to catch the bottom. You just have to dollar cost average, and that's what I'm doing. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, pretty sure I'll be watching.